Hello and thank you for joining us. You're listening to a Wedotalk with David Jaques. Hi, welcome to this week's Wedotalk. I'm here at the Wedo headquarters in Valencia, Spain, and I have a guest coming to me from the other side of the Atlantic where I'm normally located. But joining me today from the Tampa Bay area in Florida, we have Mike Montgomery, who is also known as Health Unicorn Mike. So Mike, a very good morning to you. Welcome to Wedo. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Good morning. Hi, David. I'm happy to see you. Absolutely. Hopefully the weather in Spain is just as great as it is here in sunny Florida.
It was sunny yesterday. It's a little bit cloudy here today, but that will probably change. Although they had a lot of rain here, more rain, I think, than they've had on record for a long time. But anyway, I see from your headgear there that you're living up to your reputation as the health unicorn.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. But the way that name comes about is that you're an independent insurance agent and you help people get insurance coverage. So for the benefit of people outside the US that are listening to this that may not be as familiar, would you just give a brief overview of health insurance in the US and the different types of private, public insurance? And then we can talk a little bit more about what you do.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm a nationally licensed, award-winning health insurance broker. So the interesting thing about health insurance, specifically in America, right, is that, mind you, I'm licensed in 33 different states. I've been in the industry for 9 years, and I do have access to 95% of the plans that are available. So the long and the short of it is that there's actually only 3 ways to get full coverage in the United States of America when you're dealing with under 65. We use 65 as the point of delineation because that's when Medicare starts. You're dealing with your Medicaid, your SSI, your Medicare supplements, Medicare Advantage, whole different conversation there. If you're not dealing with those things and you're under the age of 65, then things instead are going to be done either one of 3 ways. So you either have with over 50 employees, that's going to be an employer/group plan, right? Now, that's what you get at your job, have a W-2 type of position. Those rules or that segment is going to work entirely different than the other segments there. Each segment, each section works differently. So with over 50 employees, you're going to be dealing with things like your HSAs, your high deductible plans. You may have your IRA tied to your benefits. You may have your 401k tied to your benefits. Everything is done differently because those plans are what's known as age rated. So that's why the price goes up every year because they're based upon age. When you go instead, so if you don't have over 50 employees, that's another point of delineation. When you deal with under 50 employees, things are actually done on an individual basis. So when you do things on an individual basis, there's actually only 2 ways to get full coverage in the United States of America. The first option is a public option. The second option is a private option. Now, a public option is actually going to be an income-based option. It's primarily designed for those that make under $34,000 a year or designed for those that have chronic health conditions. If you're not fitting into either of those categories and you still decide to go that route, then you could pay more money out of your pocket, as much as a 400% increase. That's what Obamacare is. Those are known as the public options or the marketplace plans. Obamacare is also known as the Affordable Care Act. And then the alternative to that is to instead go with a private option. A private option is a health-based option. So the long and the short, if you could pass 10 to 15 medical questions, you could save about 30%. So in essence, under 65, you're either going to be doing things from an age perspective, from an income perspective, or from a health perspective, which will all determine your rates, how it works, your networks, and what makes the most sense there.
Thanks. That's really helpful. And where I live in California, we have this organization called Covered California. So that would be part of that public health system that you referred to. Right. And I'm sure many other states or most other states have something very similar. And another thing which is more specific about the US than certainly it is here in Europe is that majority of people who are employed are eligible for health insurance with their employer. So one of the things that we do here at Wedo is that we're supporting the freelance worker, the independent contractor, and people that work in the gig economy. And there's a lot of scary things about going out on your own. And I know you've done this yourself. You come from the corporate world and gone out on your own. I've done that myself. And one of the big fears of losing a corporate job, either from losing it from an employer standpoint, that you get downsized or laid off or whatever, or even taking a voluntary resignation and going off on your own, is that you can lose that health insurance. And then you are on your own, and then you have to go with one of these other options. Would you say that that is a huge deterrent to people to going out on their own? And is that something which they can actually overcome?
It can be a deterrent, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a deterrent, right? So I deal with a lot of people that are 1099, that are self-employed, a lot of them, right? And it really just comes down to what you have going on. Right. So if you're dealing with chronic health conditions, examples would be like diabetes, heart attacks, strokes, cancer, then you're going to want to go with a public option. Interesting note for the room that I don't tell people often is that you do actually have a special enrollment period. So in order to get under Obamacare under a public option, you have to sign up during open enrollment. Open enrollment is typically November 1st through January 15th when you're dealing with the under 65 segment. When you're dealing with the over 65 segment, it's October 15th through December 7th. So under 65, for the sake of conversation, is usually what you're going to be dealing with there. Now, if you're not dealing with it in that time frame, then the only way to get onto a public option with Obamacare is to have what's known as a special enrollment period. So a special enrollment period is an example of like, hey, I had a job and I lost my job, right? Well, at that point, you'd qualify for a special enrollment period. A special enrollment period is a 63-day window from the time you lose coverage, right? So the time that you are able to get onto Obamacare. So you have 63 days from, hey, I lost coverage to make sure that you're taken care of. Now, what a lot of people do because they're so scared of, plans and they don't understand how things work is they instead go with the Cobra Coverage option. So random note for the room that I don't tell people, or random note for Wedo, is that what people don't realize is that when you have over 50 employees, the federal government requires that employer to cover a bare minimum 50% of the cost of the insurance. So if you have less than 50 employees, that obligation is no longer there. Right. So when you're dealing with maybe a smaller business or everybody's, let's say 1099, let's say you're in trucking or you're a travel nurse, you're an accountant, you're a lawyer, you're a doctor. There's a lot of 1099 or self-employed type of positions out there where they're not really structured under a W-2, or they're structured under a W-2, but because they have so few employees, they're doing it differently. So the reason that somebody would do that is because with the W-2, that the employer is able to actually get a tax deduction. So people think, oh, my company is just looking out for me and, they have my back. Not necessarily. What is actually happening is that they're able to get a tax deduction or a write-off for contributing to the cost of your insurance. So that 50% that they're contributing, they're actually able to get that money back. So if you do it with a W-2 structure, you're going to be contributing on the front end in regards to being an employer. But if you're the employee, and let's say you're, small company, you're 1099, you're self-employed, then you're going to be doing things alternatively. You're going to be doing things either public or private is really how it's going to be. It's not going to be an option to get an employer plan there, right? So what's really going to be the determining factor is going to be what you have going on. So then your health is going to play a factor. If you're covering, hey, my wife, my kids, their health could play a factor in that regard. It's just going to depend on what you have going on, your medications, your doctor visits or hospital stays. It becomes a more in-depth conversation in regards to the qualifications. But the long and short, as I mentioned, if you're able to pass about 10 to 15 medical questions, you can actually save yourself about 30%. Not only can you save yourself about 30%, you can actually get yourself a tax deduction, a write-off for yourself with self-employed 1099. Random note for the room as a further example of this is that in America, when you're filing taxes from a health insurance perspective, you're going to get typically one of two forms. The first one is a 1095. A 1095 means that you had a W-2 job and your employer contributed to the cost of your insurance. So you're going to get a 1095 for that, right? Tax deadline just passed here. So that's a pretty important note there. If you are under an Obamacare, you're under a public option, right? And you got what's known as a marketplace plan. If you got a subsidy, which means that the government paid for part of the cost of the insurance because your income was low, right? You qualify for that income-based plan where they paid for part of the cost of the insurance. Then as long as your income didn't change, then you're going to get what's known as an 8962. Even if your income did change, you still should get that same form, an 8962. But what that's going to indicate is whether or not you have to pay money back at the end of the year. It's in essence what's known as a tax bomb that's associated under the Obamacare option. Now, if you don't have either of those, so you're not a W-2, right, and you're not getting a public option where the government is contributing, then typically you actually won't get any forms. For example, if you go with private insurance and you're 100% responsible for the cost of the insurance, you actually won't get a single form. What that actually means, though, is that it's a really good thing because that means you're able to deduct the entire cost of the insurance. So if you're getting a form, then that means you don't have 100% tax deduction there. So as scary as it can be to transition from, the job space to the entrepreneurial space or the freelance space, it actually shouldn't be as scary because you may qualify again for tax deductions. You can go with a PPO type of option, in which case you can see any doctor. You're actually able to get, there's full coverage options out there, your dental, your vision, your medications, types of things covered. Talking to somebody like myself, interestingly enough, there's only 3,200 of us in the entire country that have access to what I have access to. So of those 3,200, I was actually number 18 in the country 2 weeks ago, and then I was number 2 in the region, right? So dealing with me specifically, I'm able to know those mitigating factors, understand what you have going on, narrow the options down, and turn it into something that would actually make sense for you. But when you're comparing it, it shouldn't be as scary as you think. Just deal with a professional as opposed to doing it on your own, and you'll be in a much better position.
I think you've hit on a point there, is that it can seem very overwhelming. And you've talked about a lot of different plans and a lot of different tax forms and a lot of different scenarios and terminology that some people may not understand or may not really know what that means. And as an example, Cobra Coverage, which is where you leave your employment, but you get to keep your insurance, but then you're usually responsible for paying the full percentage of that. And so when anybody loses a job, as I say, whether it's a voluntary resignation or for some reason you involuntarily lose your job, there is no one answer for what do I do for health insurance, right? I mean, there's no one size fits all of this is the obvious step. And looking at my personal history, I had a situation once where I left a job and I knew that I was going to be joining a new job in 3 months. So the Cobra coverage, just paying for that continuing coverage for 3 months until I was eligible for the new plan, was a sensible thing to do. Whereas if you're leaving and you're going out on your own, that's really where the correct answer, I guess, is it depends. Because as you're saying, it really depends on your circumstances, right?
Correct, absolutely. And Cobra stands for a continuation of benefits. So it's exactly what you described. It's keeping the same coverage, but now instead of the employer having that 50% contribution, you're now taking on that 50% cost. That's why people see, the premiums go up tremendously there. And they're like, I don't understand what happened. Well, it's because you have Cobra coverage. So you're continuing the benefits at the previous rate, now with no contributing costs there from the employer.
So Mike, how long have you been in your business? How long have you been running this?
I've actually been in insurance for about 9 years. I was a financial advisor before I got into the health space. And before I was a financial advisor, I was in grad school. And before grad school, I actually worked as a national claims adjuster for Blue Cross Blue Shield. So I've been having a long career in regards to health insurance. I've been on my own as far as my own company, my own firm for 2 years, a little bit over 2 years now. But previously, I worked for a firm doing the same thing, just doing with the over 65. That's where I won Agent of the Year 2018, and I got second place in 2019.
Right. So you've actually done a lot of what the mission here at Wedo is, and that is to support the freelancer, that you went from a corporate job in which you were doing this work for somebody else. You took your knowledge, you took your skill set, you took your talent, and you went out on your own and you deployed it. And in the last 2 years, you've built it to a great level of success. So congratulations on doing that. It's no easy thing to do. And may I ask you also, who are your clients? So do you deal with large enterprises, small businesses, individuals? Is there such a thing as a typical client?
Yes, for me, entrepreneurs are the people I help the most. Typically those with under 50 employees, or if you're self-employed, 1099, I'm proud to be your guy. In essence, people that don't qualify to get themselves a subsidy under Obamacare, that are in pretty good health. They don't have to be an Olympian or anything. You just have to be able to pass those couple of medical questions. Then, yeah, those would be typically my ideal clients. But because I'm a broker, though, I do have access to everything. So even if they're not necessarily my ideal client, I can guide them through, tell them where to go, who to talk to. Sometimes I outsource it out. Sometimes I handle it on my own. It just depends on the day and on their scenario. But my ideal client is an entrepreneur.
Mike, may I ask you a little bit about not so much Mike the insurance agent, but Mike the family man? You have a 6-year-old and a newborn, I believe. So how is your family doing these days?
Yeah, I've got 2 6-year-olds and a newborn. We're doing well. We're very blessed, exhausted every day, with the newborn, but can't complain. I'm extremely blessed. It's just an opportunity to be better every day. And that's what I really love about entrepreneurship and having the family. And, I'm doing it all for them. So I really love it.
Great. And for somebody with a newborn in the house, you look particularly bright for being 8 in the morning. So something must be going okay. And you've moved around a lot. I mean, Florida is, I guess, a stopping point for you that is working for you right now. But you've lived in a number of different locations, I think.
Correct. I've actually lived in 15 different states. I've lived all over the country. So I'm typically able to relate to people on multiple different levels as a result of having moved around so much.
And where did you grow up? Where was your early life?
I was born in Anchorage, Alaska, and then went from Alaska to Washington to Oregon to California, and then everywhere on the East Coast. High school was in Virginia, and then my undergraduate degree was at Norfolk State University, and then I went to Auburn for my double master's.
And do you see yourself staying in Florida for long?
The great part about selling insurance is that I can work anywhere. I can be remote as necessary, typically work from home, as you're seeing here, but it works out. I'm very excited about it.
That's certainly the way of many industries, is that ability to have the flexibility. So that's great you're able to do that. So, Mike, without us getting political, because I really don't want this to be a political discussion, but many people say that the healthcare coverage system in the US is broken. It's certainly complicated. I think whatever your political beliefs are, I think everybody will say it's a complex situation. But a lot of people would say it's broken, it needs reforming. We've had various presidents say they're going to reform healthcare, make it more affordable, turn it private, turn it public, social medicine, all private medicine. What are your thoughts on the current situation? How could it be better? Well,
it kind of depends. Honestly, people have to understand how it was before in order to understand what it needs to be, So in essence, before Obama took office, every single plan in the entire country was underwritten, which meant that there were medical questions involved. Also, every single plan, you had to have a certain level of income, right? You couldn't be insolvent in order to get the coverage. Otherwise, you were dealing with your Medicaid type of options, your SSI, those types of plans there, right? Those are obviously government-sponsored options there. So once Obama took office and he came up with the Affordable Care Act, or he didn't invent it, but he came up and implemented the Affordable Care Act, also affectionately known as Obamacare, he actually removed those 2 requirements from the public market. So those that were insolvent, that didn't have any money, and those that had chronic health conditions could still get coverage. Well, what that did is that squeezed those in the middle, so they had to pay more money out of their pocket. The key in America, honestly, is being able to know how to use the coverage more so than necessarily trying to revamp it.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And one thing I've heard is that the impact of COVID has prompted premiums to go a lot higher. Is that the case? Are you seeing that?
Depends on the sector, but typically speaking, there was an impact financially on the insurance premiums. So even though they were impacted, people still had COVID that were healthy, right? It wasn't as high of a percentage as those that were quote unquote unhealthy that were probably under an Obamacare option anyway. And
so, Mike, a couple of things I'd like to ask you before we wrap up. One thing is that I know that you're very active on social media. I see you often speaking on Clubhouse. I think that's actually how we first connected through Indy Greg. How important is it for you to market your business through social media? Is that all that you do, or do you have any other marketing methods?
Honestly, social media is a big chunk of my business. I do conferences, I do podcasts, I do summits, right? I'm a speaker, actually set up to speak at about 6 of them this year. I get interviewed and all types of stuff like that. And then what else I do? I go to networking events, and then I do I'll have referrals and referral relationships. I do a lot of strategic partnerships in that capacity. And then social media. I'm active on Facebook. I'm active on TikTok. I'm active on Clubhouse. I'm active on LinkedIn. I'm active on Instagram. And what I realized with my client avatar specifically was that entrepreneurs were the people I help the most. So I'm just happen to be wherever the entrepreneurs are at. I run my own rooms on Clubhouse, pretty active. I've been promoted as the official health insurance broker for multiple different groups. And I think that social media is the wave of the future, specifically when it comes to insurance, because if you can educate people, then not only can you make the sale, but on top of that, you can actually help them so they can know not to cancel their policy because, they didn't know what was happening. So social media is definitely a huge part of my business.
And you're also creating a sense of community. And that's something which, again, stepping out of the corporate world and going out on your own can be very scary. That if you can have that sense of community, people you can learn from, people that can learn from you as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I noticed looking at your website, I think you have a great phrase on there. It's something like, when life occurs, you get to choose. And I think that's a very critical thing. I might be misquoting you there, but I think that's great to put out that message that there are choices. You're not necessarily trapped into something.
That's my wife there. My wife's branding. So that's definitely her words comparatively.
So Mike, what does the future hold for you? Are you going to continue doing this for the foreseeable future, or do you see yourself doing something else at some point?
While I love health insurance, I've been in the industry for so long and I have thousands of clients, it's a language I speak that few don't. It's kind of like speaking Aramaic, Yeah. So it's a great thing for me. Also, I'm doing, I've made some partnerships and connections with commercial lending and commercial funding. We can actually do up to 10 billion commercial lending and commercial funding. So I'm dealing with that as well. But my basis will probably always be health insurance. I don't necessarily see myself doing something else. I can do things complementary to it, but it always is going to come back to health insurance because I feel like it allows me to help people, and I dedicated my entire life to service. So it gives me a direct interface to live that purpose.
Great. That's great that you're doing something like this. And I think it is a very much needed thing. So one final question, if anybody wants to reach you, what's the best way of finding you?
Well, my website's always a great one, www.healthunicornmike.com. You can always hit me up on Clubhouse. You can hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, everything's all Health Unicorn Mike. And then I have a 10K card as well, which is my digital business card, where people can always check out my website and check out what I got going on up there. They're specifically on Clubhouse. I'm in part of the Black Think Tank, or they can come to my club, Unicorn Collaborations. I'll always be there.
Great. Well, Mike, thank you so much for spending time with me today and taking a little bit of time out of your day to share these thoughts. This has been great. And I really appreciate you being here, and wish you every success certainly in your business as that develops, as it grows, and every success with the family of yours.
Perfect. Thank you, David. I wish you the same as well.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Mike. Really appreciate your time. And thanks everybody for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave your comments below. Subscribe to our channel. And until next time, be well and be happy. We upload a Wedo Talk every week, so if you enjoyed this one, please subscribe and leave your comments below.